So today's conversation is going to be around a subject matter that I hear all the time, and that is around fear and imposter syndrome and guilt. These are very heavy and complex topics. So I wanted to bring in my therapist friend Nicole, and see how we can navigate and talk about these topics from a clinical point of view, because I feel like there's a lot of misinformation about handle these types of emotions and states of being. So I really wanted to have this conversation from a clinical point of view. So Nicole McLeod is a practicing therapist in Vancouver, Canada, and she describes herself as not your typical therapist, rather a gentle agitator, which I love. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, Anna. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I would say that to my clients, and I think they would agree that and not all is so happily agree, but I come at it absolutely from a place of helping to make this place a warm, safe container. But at the same time, we know that if we're uncomfortable and we're stretching, well, that's the perfect precursor to growth. So I do try to stir things up. And that's a great segue into growing and changing, which is usually why they come to therapy.
Exactly. No, 100%. I think like one of the things that like even when I've been in therapy, like just feeling like I'm not getting enough push. I'm like, that's why I'm here. I want you to push me, and all you're doing is listening. Like I need action to be reciprocated. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that you're like, no, I do want to trigger you a little bit, because that's how this change is going to happen.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it's funny because I actually get a lot of clients who have been to other therapists and they haven't seen action, they haven't experienced
Mm-hmm.
change. And then they come to me and I do qualify them and say, all right, I think that's amazing that you're picking up on that, that maybe you were
Yeah.
in there hoping for some relief and you probably got some relief, but you didn't get long lasting
Mm,
change. They weren't
yes.
playing the long game. So it's kind of a boot camp style with me.
Yes, and that's exactly kind of like what I wanted to talk about today is these subject matters of fear, guilt, imposter syndrome, they can be dense, and I don't want that to be this conversation, but at the same time I don't want it to be hacky. Like we're not here to give anybody who's listening like 5 tips to cure your fear overnight. Like that's not what's going to be happening today. At
If
the end of the
only, if
day, I
only.
know, if only. Like there's no journaling prompt or affirmations you can say to cure your fear overnight, and like the
Mhm.
hard truth is like just with anything in life, especially in business, like it's you have to do the work. There's
Yeah.
literally you can't outsource the work, like you have to do the work yourself, and that's just the way it is. So we're going to try to navigate this conversation today in a way that's like really actionable and helps you understand what's going on and how to move through it, but it's still going to take you to do the work, which is just the way it is. And I find that I see this all the time, not only in myself, but also in my clients, where they have a fear of failure, a fear of success, a fear they can't hold on to a certain level of money, a fear that they can't lead a team. And a lot of these mindset issues, I feel like, stem from childhood. And obviously, I'm not a therapist, so I can't diagnose this, which is why Nicole is here. But something that I find to be true, and not only myself, but what I've seen is that if you don't tackle this early on in your business or even in your personal life, these things aren't going to magically disappear the more money you make. If anything, it's going to be harder the more money you make. So, regardless if you're having already these like mindset issues at like 5K months or making 20K months, or even if you're a millionaire, like it's going to be impossible, if so hard to be able to tackle all of this with the mindset issues, because you can have the best strategy in the world for marketing, but if your mindset is shit, then the strategy and marketing is still not going to work. So really having a 50-50 approach is like what we're talking about today. So how would you talk to someone who is having these like fears and imposter syndrome in their business?
Yeah, and that sounds so good, Anna. Thanks for like contextualizing it like that. I get asked a lot just to speak about fear, but you're putting it into such a great context. And one of the words that stands out to me, what you said, is you're absolutely spot on with your word tackle. And I'm going to say more about that in a moment. But understanding and being aware of what the heck is even going on regarding
Mm,
fear as it
yeah.
relates to so many things. But let's keep it specific to, you've got a great client base and they're wanting to, it sounds like at times, grow or expand or take the next leap. And these things, they really hold them back. So
Yeah.
imposter syndrome, feeling maybe some worry and fear. So understanding what's going on with you is, bar none, is the beginning. So what does that really mean? That sounds really psychology speak, like understanding what's going on with you. But I got to get a little sciencey for a moment because it is a bit science-based. We're talking about your brain.
Yep.
So
Hit me, Nicole.
yeah, okay. Well, I won't ever, but I'll dance with you with it. But I like it. I like it. When you feel that first sensation, the fear or the anxiety, you got some nerves going on. So it's a
Yep.
real physical thing. And right away, you've got a stimulus. So it could be, like you said before, I think I heard you say a client who's dropped their income 1 month has gone down 5K.
Yes,
And
we've talked about that.
that's gonna trigger something. But first off, in between that trigger, in between that stimulus, and in between responding to it, which could be AKA freaking out, I need to get more clients, I need to make a quick buck, I need to do something,
Yep.
there's actually space in there. So that's one thing I'll say, and that's a saying I'll say to my clients. In between stimulus and response, there's space. I didn't make that up. That's an old Viktor Frankl theoretical stance. But we're talking about the brain in there, and that space in there. When you get those sensations, you feel that tightness in your chest, or your breathing picks up, or you go to that place that you did of how you survived in childhood. We're talking about the oldest part of our brain, which is the reptilian brain. And it's not a thinker, it's a reactor, and it's there
Mm-hmm.
to keep us surviving. So, a lot of therapists will talk about, think of that little reptilian and picture it. Now, I don't like the picture, the image. So you pick your own image. You will maybe pick some reptile. I've always picked a frog. Now I know this isn't Bill Nye the Science Guy, and a frog technically is not a reptile, but actually frogs are older than dinosaurs. So I pick a little frog and I put a little crown on him. And I think, Anna, you might do that too. You'd put a beautiful crown, right? You'd put something
Okay.
sparkly on there. So you
Yes.
picture that. So already what's happening is you're starting to sort out, what's my little figure, what's my reptile, what
Mm-hmm.
is it, it's sitting on my shoulder. Well, you're going to notice the fear is going to start to go down a little bit because you're thinking about it. You're starting to give yourself some space in there between stimulus and response to start to get some perspective. So when you can perch that little frog on your shoulder and say, okay, I know fear is here to keep me safe, I
Mm-hmm.
don't need to react to it unless you're hiking in the woods and you come across a grizzly bear, blah, blah, blah. But that's not what we're doing here. We're talking about making decisions and growing and stretching. So when you can get some perspective on that, as soon as you do that, then you open up potential, and then you can go to the thinking part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex. When that happens, you've got options, you've got power, you've got choices, and you can start to look at your patterns. And I know you and I have talked a little bit about patterns. Can you tell me a little bit about what you see in your clients that are patterns that work for them or patterns that get destructive?
Negative patterns that I see is kind of what you were saying about constantly contingency planning when when like minor things are not going right. So as a business, you are just going to have ebbs and flows. Like that is just the way it works. Would it be
Right.
great if every month was an increase absolutely, but realistically, like it's just not, it doesn't work like that. So what I see a lot is clients come to me, and because they have like a minor inconvenience, or maybe 1 month is a little bit lower than the other month because it's just a down season for them, in their business, they start contingency planning, but not like, oh, how am I going to make up like this 5K? They literally go to the extremes like, oh my God, my business is over because I didn't make like an extra 5K this month. And so instead of focusing on, okay, let's just pause for a second and think about how do we optimize what is not working? Maybe let's talk to my mentor, Anna, about this. They just literally spend all this time contingency planning on things that are not going to move the needle in a positive direction. And then just they like physically manifest all of these like negative emotions that become their reality. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. This escalated quickly.
Right, right. And it's escalates, it's the contingency, and maybe it's a bit of catastrophizing. And it's an old pattern to keep them safe. It's an old
Yeah.
pattern to keep them surviving. And to some degree, that's amazing because it's gotten them probably to where they are today. And then there comes a point where too much of it it stalls and it goes back to, and it triggers that part of the
Mm,
brain again, the
yep.
frog, the reptile, and it slows everything down. So first of all, knowing that pattern and those intense negative emotions, and they don't always come from that one person. We can also have these big, strong reactions that aren't even related to us. They can be ancestrally, it can be through events that we don't even know what happened. We don't understand that piece. But, I always say, honor what's happening in the moment. Take some space, get some oxygen, move around. Those emotions, by definition, emotion is that which moves you. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that they come to you, because we do need to connect in these moments, and we do
Yeah.
need to make some sense out of it. So I imagine if you're trying to cheerlead them and get them on side, you're really trying to do throwing them a cognitive life ring to sort of put some good, let's get some positive thoughts around this. But there's like that space in between there where there needs to be a bit of a pause. And in that pause, there might be something that was contributing to that lower month. Maybe they picked a client that wasn't the best connection. Maybe it wasn't the
Yep.
right fit. Maybe the market was in a downturn. Maybe one of their kids were sick, or they were sick, or what, all these other really practical pieces.
Yep.
So first thing I would always do is just honor and validate your body's trying to keep you safe. And it's usually in that very quick honoring and validation that potential starts to emerge. And the great thing, and I will say to people, I don't want you to get rid of your fear. You can anyways. I don't want you to
Yeah.
get rid of your anxiety. Let's make it work for you. Let's
Mm,
progress that. What else could you do differently? Maybe there's a pivot. Maybe there's a change in there. And usually there's something in there. It's not just all smoke and mirrors and reactivity. There's usually something in there. There's a possibility that that thread can change. And it's going to take some risking and growing and changing. And that's really hard to do, because that's where I'm imagining you might agree with this, but that's where the imposter syndrome kind of can come into place. Is that
oh, 100%.
maybe, and how do your clients talk about that? Do they actually use that term, or you become so astute at hearing the themes that you're like, I know what this is?
No, I think the women that I work with in business they hear about imposter syndrome all the time, but also they like self-identify as like, oh, what if I come out with this like new offering and nobody buys? And why would they buy? Because I don't feel, like an expert in this, even though I am, but I don't want to come off as like an imposter, because who am I? Who am I to be this person? Who am I to be this leader? Who am I to have these opinions, right? And it's like you said something the other day when we were talking about like being comfortable sitting in the fog and just like
Mm-hmm.
taking a moment. And I think that was really powerful, like sitting in the fog and really like honing in on like your principles. So, can you
Right.
talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Victoria LeBomb, she does a great TED talk on risk forward, and that's where I stole that from her. So sitting in the fog is about a time when you are maybe about to make a change. You're not
Mm-hmm.
entirely certain if that's the change that you want to make. And what do we know about fog? Well, it's a weather system that we don't speed through, right? You could fall off a cliff.
Yeah, it's
But
dangerous.
it's dangerous, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
dangerous, and not dangerous so much that we need to catastrophize, but
Yep.
there's also some important gems to be gleaned. So there's hidden gems in that time. And if you are to step even further back, one thing I'll say with my clients a lot is, let's just back this truck up. Let's just back up the river. Let's just gain some bigger perspective. It's always about, because usually we're focusing on that really one intense micro thing, but
Yep.
let's do the voice of reason around it. And if you're asking yourself, well, what are my guiding principles? And if somebody who's sitting in the fog is aware that they are working to live, and live means joy and adventure and activity and time with their family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If that principle is being violated because they're, just churning it out, trading time for money, then maybe that fog is going to glean some new answers for them.
Mm-hmm.
So taking a look at what are your principles, and that seems like something that everybody knows. That seems like that's common sense and common knowledge. You would be so surprised at how often I ask that question when there's a bit of a blank. And I love that, because then we've got something to really go back and forth with and process. And it's okay not to know them, but it's a really great growing perspective from strength and power to get focused on what those perspectives are and then move through that fog. Does that resonate with you?
Oh, 100%. I think principles are so important, especially as business owners. Like you need to know your principles. You need to know what you're doing. You need to know the mission of your business. Like who are you as like not only the human, but the business owner? I mean, I've recently had a client who she was faced with kind of like a principle moral issue with one of her clients and
Mm,
she had to let them go and she was each month
mm,
she was making a couple $1,000s from them. That is a hefty retainer, a couple grand just from one person. And when I asked her about it, I was like, how are you feeling? You know, are you stressed about the money? She's like, honestly, no, because it was the easiest I have to let you go
mm.
I've ever had, just because she had such conviction in the principles and what she stands for that she's like,
Wow.
does losing the money suck? Absolutely. Which, funny
Right.
enough, she literally got an inquiry a week later from somebody who wanted to pay her even more, which full circle moment.
Wow.
But
Wow.
she was just like, so like I cannot as a human being be associated with something like this, and nor does my brand. Like this would actually do damage to my brand. But it's kind of
Right.
like, and you never think you're going to be in those situations until you are, right? But like you need to have that figured out if you are going to be building this like massive brand business that is going to be a community and like a refuge for people.
Yeah, wow. That's there's so much in there. I'm super excited for your client to have been able to delineate that and make sense of that. And that what's coming up for me is she's got her principles, her priorities, and her values really well in check. And when those are in check, then she's not saying yes or no based on scarcity. She's saying yes
Yep.
and no based on those principles, and she's looking towards success. She's looking towards abundance, and that takes a big risk. That takes a really big
Oh,
person to say no.
100%.
She's saying no. She's leaving money on the table in the short term, but she's playing the long game, and I absolutely love that.
100%. And that's another thing is where I find that like clients who don't have principles or have very high imposter syndrome, they do tend to be in that scarcity lack mindset of, oh, but I have to take on everyone because what if the money runs out?
Right,
Like
right.
and every client is kind of like the last client on the face of the earth. Nobody else will hire me because I'm going to say no to this one client. But honestly, from my personal experience and from my clients, like the more no's you give, the more opportunity there is to bring in those hell yeses of clients that are going to respect you, treat you with dignity, you have the same morals, the same values, and really like just like respect you as human beings. And it's such like a pleasure to work with them. But that's something you also have to get comfortable with is like sitting in the like uncertainty of like, okay, I'm going to say no to this money, but like I also don't know where the next client is going to come from.
Right. And you're also, what you're saying there, you're really speaking to a principle that or more like a concept that I love to process with my clients is around the idea of failure. What was your family of origin discussions around failure? What was your family of origin discussions around making decisions and mistakes? A lot of people
Yeah.
they'll spend a lot of time, they'll swim in the ambiguity or in the ambivalence, which, you could swap those words out for procrastination, for
Yep.
hesitation, blah, on and on and on. They're sort of, those are all cousins, I think, of each other. And
Mm,
why those strong concepts really hold people back is because at one point in their lives, likely making a mistake was really costly. And it
yep.
could have been costly from a social herd perspective, that they weren't accepted or their ranking dropped. There could be punitive, they could be cut from the team, taking a risk. So how you now as an adult makes sense. And I'll talk a lot about, what's that young version of you? What could you say now as a woman to the young version of yourself when she wants to step out and maybe she wants to try out when she was little for that team or a play or something like that? What would you say to her now? You probably say to her, just go for it, just do
Yeah.
it, just get the experience. So I then grow that concept up into, there's really not win and lose, there's win and learn. And if you can
Mm,
accept the learn piece, which is hard. I mean, we make mistakes. I make mistakes. I'll use metaphors with clients sometimes that land painfully. But in my
mm,
head, it made perfect sense. In my
yeah.
head, it was amazing. Right. And then I see the look on their face. I'm like, oh, okay, we got to check this out. Pause. What's happening?
Yeah.
So it's easy to be acceptable or accepting of others' mistakes and failures. Much harder to accept that in yourself and
Oh,
then develop
absolutely.
that compassion. And we are tribal. We need each other in that. I've got teenagers, and as raising them, I say, we don't actually become ourselves by ourselves. And a lot of
Mm,
us can be fiercely independent, who have
guilty.
had to be independent, guilty,
Guilty.
right? Yeah. And be pioneers and can really do that. I know you've been so incredibly successful being independent. And what I find so interesting is you offer this amazing community to your clients. So it's among them that they're discovering themselves. I know I'm being amazingly tangential right now, but to bring this ship back, it does take that connection as well.
Yeah, something that I hear all the time when we're like dissecting why certain clients didn't do certain things or why they feel certain ways. And it always comes back to, well, when I was a child, I was told insert negative thought here. Well, my dad told me insert lie here. Well, I was never supported in this, so therefore that's the conclusion I made. And it's just this constant like ring of
Right.
fire of unhealthy habits and unhealthy thoughts that
Yeah.
then because that were never reality to begin with, but then
Right.
as adults we've accepted that it is reality even though it never was.
Right. And that's where it gets so messy because they're getting these messages during a really imprintable time in their
Yeah.
brain, right? If you think of a puppy, if you expose them to all these scary things when they're really young, when their brain's still making those neural connections, they're going to be really reactive dogs. When you think of a child and they get the messages, you can't, you shouldn't, you're not good enough, you don't measure up, well, you start to believe that outside message and you start to believe that of yourself. And then but you're not old enough to go, well, wait a second,
Yeah.
teacher, Science 9 teacher. I may have failed this test, but it doesn't mean I can't go on to honor Science 10 because you don't have that prefrontal cortex developed to give you, perspective and some
Yeah.
intuition. You don't have that experience. So it's super duper sucky when we're really little that we get these messages. And then we fast forward and we're in business and there is an opportunity, you've actually been called to launch something or to have that promotion or step into much bigger shoes. And you remember, well, somebody said I couldn't, so I probably couldn't. I'm probably not
Mm.
good enough. However, here's where the growth happens. And I will challenge my clients with this. This is not Nicole speak, by the way. I'm always about giving credit to where these ideas come from. Do look at Adam Grant. He is an amazing leader in the field. So he talks about imposter syndrome in the way of that, often people, they won't believe the messages that other people say. Others are believing in them, giving them the opportunities, and they're not believing in themselves. But others are saying, hey, we want you on this team. We want you to take this advancement. And no, I can't do it. I don't believe in myself. But yet you believe in yourself not to believe them.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah. Wow.
So at one point, and I always say that with a smile because I've been caught up in that way too, and wait a second, I've got opportunities there. I can't do it. But why not take a leap at this point and maybe take a chance on how maybe somebody else might see me, right? It
Yeah.
might take, and that's where that discomfort comes in. And unfortunately, for so many people, they do stay in that protective place. They don't have to feel that. But I'll say it all the time. As long as you're willing, as long as you're wanting to stay in the comfort, you're not going to grow. So
Absolutely.
are you up for it? Are you up for that stretch and that
Yeah.
discomfort?
And we've talked about this, but I feel like my issue my issue is like
Will you
I'm
do some
almost
therapy now, Anna?
yes, please. My issue is I have like the adverse reaction to that where like my childhood was full of no's and as an adult now I'm almost resentful of that. And so now I have this mentality of like, well, because I was never seen and never heard and never taken seriously as a child, that all of my ideas and thoughts and wants and needs were just like disregarded, that now I'm almost like so resentful of that, that like I instantly listen to nobody's opinion and I'm like, well, I'm not even going to listen to you because like, and I just get defensive. And then I'm like, well, I believe I can do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to be determined and I'm going to be the most successful. So it's almost like a visceral reaction because nobody believed in me. Then I was like, oh,
Mhm.
yeah, well, I'm going to fucking show you up.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
now I'm like,
watch me, right?
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And like, don't get me wrong, it's clearly served me well. But I have to
Mhm.
be honest, like, I've hit a point recently where like it's honestly become exhausting. This
Mm.
constant like push and pull has gotten so exhausting where like when I'm thinking about scaling to $1 million and like growing my team, I'm like, I 100% want to do that, but I don't want to do it out of place of like resentment and like anger. And like, it's just like those emotions are actually like starting to like literally wear me down. So, what do you have
Mm.
to say about that?
You just need to just need to stretch a little bit. Just kidding. Um, I think, well, first of all, um, I think that you made a decision, it sounds like early on is, and you've already said it there. And I think it's just, it's so powerful that in the face of a lot of no's, and I find it so interesting, Anna, because people like you who haven't been seen, like you said, and they haven't been uh, like loved up, given opportunity and told, oh yes, you can do anything, you're amazing, and we see your potential, and you're blah
Yeah.
blah. You haven't, and it does, that's another talk about what kind of how we do treat each other, but it does. I do find it really fascinating that how successful you and others who've had the same background as you, because a lot of people have, and a lot of successful people do make that choice is show me. I'm not accepting a no, I can do it. So I think on one hand, because I think we're going to talk about the other hand in a minute, which
Yeah.
is why you brought it up. On one hand, we're talking about grit and intuition and resilience. Some of who you are and some of what's just, it's just all you. It's something that's just in there and it's in your makeup and it's
I
amazing
believe
and
that.
it's sparkly, right? I know you
Yeah.
believe that. Um, and then you also said, well, hang on a second though. It's tiring and it's
Mm,
exhausting, and that's true too, and that's where I would imagine just for a second that when you are on your mastermind calls, that there's like a building and a support that's going both ways. I know you're giving it out,
yeah.
but the light and the excitement and the growth, that you're almost parenting in a way, and you're almost reparenting yourself.
Yeah.
So you're healing some of that attachment stuff in real
Yeah.
time. And I say to people, they can come in with some, and there's different types of attachments, but they can come in with some non-secure attachments, but doesn't mean you can't grow that up in real time as an adult. So it does mean making a choice to be vulnerable, and it does mean being a choice or making that choice to open up and ask for some support. And hearing you speak just a minute ago, you're already doing that because it does take a team, right? What is team? Together, each achieves more. And beyond that, we're also there for the pitfalls and the downfalls and the support. So we are not meant to walk this whole thing alone. And I've seen you surround yourself with strong women, strong humans, and dogs, and I think um, you put that out there. I don't know if I can tell this story, so you might cut this piece out. But I remember how we met. I remember seeing
Yes.
you.
Yeah. So,
Um,
for anybody that doesn't know, and why would you? Because I've never shared this story. But Nicole and I actually met this past summer in the south of France. We happened just to be on the same boat together and we started chatting. And here we are, like 6 months later.
right, right. And it took to sort of thread this back was, I don't know if Anna noticed me, but I was with my daughter and I really noticed Anna. She was sitting there, you can imagine if you know Anna, kind of perfectly decked out for France style. Red bathing suit, brimmed hat, sunglasses, like looking super
I
duper
played the
hot and
part.
amazing.
I played the
Oh,
part when I travel.
yeah, you assimilated, you fit in just
100%.
wonderful. And there was this flurry of people, didn't know what boat to get on, and I kept my intention kept I kept cranking my neck, looking over at Anna. And who is this? Well, maybe I get to the front, and we spoke to Anna. And right away, you gave it up. I don't know which boat to get on either. And that was it. We didn't know, she didn't know. We kind of teamed up together.
Mm,
And then the rest is history, which after came from a day swimming, lovely drinks, dinner, blah, 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 blah. So we could have each figured that out independently alone
yeah.
and maybe gotten on the wrong boat because we're strong women who can do that. But why not seek out another friend, teammate,
Mm,
partner, etc., right? And I think there's lots of power, and that's where it can get to go back to the fog as you stay in there in the amount of time that you need to, and you'll know. So pay attention to yourself. A thought experiment I give my clients to do all the time. Now I'm going to call it more of like an observation experiment. Is just start to look at your patterns. Start to look at how you move through your day. What are you aware of? And so much information is going to emerge, so many more answers when you start paying attention. And that's really hard to do when you're super duper stressed out, or you're feeling guilty, or you're feeling that fear. But doing the things in between there, we can just talk about it, or we can do about it. And there's a time to talk
mm,
about it, and there's a time to get actionable.
yep.
So at the very beginning of this, in the first minute or so, you talked about how do you tackle these things? Well, that's what you do.
Yeah.
I really believe in any sort of movement that you're capable of, whatever your capacity is in that time in your life. And I invite clients all the time is experiment with this. I know you're anxious about this big job promotion. In the meantime, we've made some sense of it. We've looked at your family of origin for the next week, or ideally 6 weeks. Get active. Take a look at your sleeping. That stuff you can Google all over the internet, but it isn't BS. It really is the deal. How are you taking care of yourself? I always
Yeah.
think of, or I used to think of self-care, right, as this back burner idea.
Oh,
But the more
100%.
it's on the back, right? The more it's
Uh-huh.
on the back burner, the less I care for myself. So weaving that in, that's the kind of thing that starts to unlock the potentials.
And on the flip side of that, what I see, and honestly, like this is something I have trouble with, and for longest time, like I've never said this out loud before because
Oh boy.
I'm always concerned it's gonna come off like mean or rude. But to be honest, like this is just what I think. I have a really hard time. I feel like I'm a very compassionate and empathetic person, just like through what I've been through and like what I've seen, people I love like go through, but when it comes, because I'm so hyper independent and I'm so like I don't give a shit what anybody has to say because I know I'm capable of doing this and I'm that way. Then when people come to me with these issues of like, well, but I can't do this because so and so said this about me, I'm like, oh my God, get over it. Like, so you're literally just not going to do anything in your life because somebody 10, 20 years ago at birth when you were 5 years old told you're not creative. And so like I just have a hard time talking people through that because
Yeah.
there is not a reality where that would ever be me. Like I cannot comprehend nobody believing in you so much so that you don't even believe in yourself and then you're just walking this earth with not a single soul believing in yourself including yourself. Like at that point like what the fuck are we doing?
Ass
So
kicking. You're ass kicking.
so it's just like really hard for me to even know what to say because like I can't
Mhm.
imagine like I would not be living the life I'm living now if all those people told me no and I listened to them because they're technically supposed to know what's right for me or because we technically are more, more educated than me or they've lived more life than me. Like but at the end of the day they never nobody in my life like lived the kind of life I wanted to live. So like why was I going to listen to them to begin with? And I'm like I honestly think like you said like there was just something built into me where I had that like grit and stamina. So I don't really know how to approach when people come to me and with all these like limiting thoughts because I'm like, well, I hate to say it, but if you want to run this business, you need to kind of like get the fuck over it and like stand up for yourself. So like how, like, what would you say to that?
Oh, I love your honesty, Anna. And I love that, what you just did at the beginning. If I'd ever said this out loud and you just did something super cool there, you took a risk. Maybe you're offending somebody,
Mm,
maybe it said blah, 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 blah. And just awesome for that. Um, so it's the long game. And I think that, for your client, and okay, wait for it. Can I give you some feedback?
yes, please.
is 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 you may struggle a little bit with a little bit of patience.
Oh,
You may want,
100%,
right? And you
100%.
you may want them because but that's one of your superpowers, is you can get things done expediently, you can get to
Yes.
success quickly. And I think that, don't change that. You can model that, and I think that's why people are coming to you. At the same time, um you can go slow and go fast at the same time. So going slow, I'm aware that I said the same time multiple times there. So we'll swap that word out. Concurrently, you can validate somebody and be with them in their struggle. You can be with them in your pain, in their pain. You can hold on to that, but we're not letting go of the ideal, the path, the plan, the goal, the target.
Yes.
We're not letting
Yes.
go of that. We're just going, okay, so we're going to talk about how maybe you got here. And it doesn't necessarily even to be therapy. I think you can do it in a really coachy way.
Oh,
You can coach,
100%. Yeah.
right? You can coach them into, yeah, that all makes sense. And let's just be a little gentle. Remember, I said I do the gentle agitation. The gentle piece is, we're not bruising anybody. We're honoring that they are so great and aware that all of these things are part of the sparkle that is them. So, you can take, what is a diamond? A diamond comes from a rock. Put that rock under intense heat and pressure, well, it turns into the diamond. So
Mm,
you've got to feel that intense heat. You got to feel that pressure. And so what I say to them, because I did that in early days as a therapist, I think I actually lost a lot of clients. And because I could see where they could go. And
oh, absolutely.
I was doing the intense cheerleader thing on and on and on, but I'm like, what? Wait a second. I'm cheerleading them, I'm pushing them, but it's not working. So,
Mm,
so what needed to change? What needed to change is I need to do a little time to go slow and validate. And once we validate and to connect, well, here's like the magic. The magic is they start to do it themselves. And
mm,
then
yeah.
your job as the coach, my job as the therapist, is to remind them the track they're on, and keep
Yes.
stoking that and keep seeing it. Keep seeing this is the path where you want to go. I see you doing it. I see you there. And I know that, and you know what you can say, this might lighten the load for you as well, is um this isn't the last time we're going to talk about this to the client. I know this is going to
Mm,
come up. It's going to come up again, because that then it it just vaporizes the pressure that they aren't allowed to go there again. They can come there again. I'll go there again. I'll have that come up. Doesn't mean I'm still not going to go shoot for that target and accomplish it. But if we can know that that's just part of you, that's not all of you. So if it comes up again, then you go, oh, right, that's right. I took a look at it. I shared it with somebody. I validated. And you said something about running. Did you say running a business or running this? I love
yeah.
running. No, I love running, but that's not what I'm talking about. I love the running metaphor analogy,
Yeah.
because it's a marathon. And
Exactly.
when we want to
Yes.
sprint through the difficult stuff, well, that's not how marathons go. You got to pace yourself. And I think that's where you're going with it. Is that
Yes.
sort of, is those the symptoms, or those are the situations you've seen?
Yes, they think what I see often is that when they come to me with that kind of like mentality already, they're just like, this is all there is. And I'm like,
Hmm.
but there isn't, because like you said, I see where you're going to be in 10 years. Like I can see it so clearly and it makes me so excited. And that's why I'm like, oh, why is this getting in your way? Do you know like if you could only see what I see, like you wouldn't be talking about yourself like this, right? So like
Right.
because I'm like like such a devout cheerleader to them, I'm like, oh, it's killing me that you don't see this potential. Like it's literally killing me. And so, but I think it's like, they're so focused on like the tree in front of them that they can't see the forest, but I can. So it's kind of like, how
Yeah.
are we both like navigating around that?
In
Because
in
yeah,
parallel. right, in
Yeah.
parallel, side by side. And I
Yeah.
think if we go with the marathon analogy, if you were at, you're really getting a cramp and you're at mile 18,
Yeah.
well, you don't have, or maybe mile 20, right? You don't have too much to go. And I feel like this cramp, it's like, what, I should have never joined this race. Well, if you're running alongside, you're not running, you're there to support your friend, your client, you're going to say, it fucking sucks. It hurts right
Oh,
now.
100%. Some
Just
parts
keep
do
going.
fucking suck. And I think we need to
Yep.
be honest about that, because especially like what I see a lot of the times, there's a toxic narrative that it like some people just have it easy. And I'm like, I can assure you the people that are facilitating that bullshit narrative have had multiple breakdowns and have cried at least like
Right.
once a month this year. But
Right.
like, and like some parts of it do fucking suck, but then there are other
Yeah.
parts that are fantastic. I mean, it's just like life. Like every day
Yeah.
doesn't fucking suck.
And I think that some of the things that perpetuate that some people have it easy is so out of our control. And we know what we're talking
Yeah.
about. Social media is often a highlight reel. It
Yep.
can be inspiration or it can be a harsh, stark comparison that puts you many, many legs down versus, and I love it when there is information out there and there's exposure to reality. I have a friend who's um, recently launched a book and she's going through the trials and tribulations of launching a book.
Yeah.
And you and me talked about that wonderful um, news article that got posted about, I went to my book launch and nobody came, not even my launch team. And you know what is beautiful, because thank you to Jodi Picoult and the people that spoke out about that and said, been there,
Yeah.
we've all been there. And so, you know, to your clients who are listening, airing some of the vulnerable underbelly, airing the parts that that are true to the parts that are growing, those are parts of that diamond that's being cultured, grown, expanded. That's where the light comes from, not just the perfect parts.
Yes. And I know when we talked the other day, we talked about relief versus tools
Right.
when running
Sort of
business.
relief,
Yes.
versus change. And
Yes.
right, yeah, relief. You're really close though. I like that. I know I can tease you. Right. And I mean, and I will see that in business clients or even couples that come in. They're really struggling on a certain point and they want to intensely share that. Well, it can be with anything, right? And relief is kind of like what you talked about, 10, 15 minutes ago, about just wanting to be heard. And we'll just leave it at
Mm,
that, because
yeah.
that's really, you just want to be held. I just want to be held and tell me it's okay.
Yeah. I
um
just want one person to be like, that's a good idea, Anna. Like, that's literally all I want.
right, right. And we need both. We need a little relief, because if we're over threshold, meaning that's code for it's too intense, I can't breathe, I can't think. All right, we need some relief. We need to dial it back. We need to find something inside
Yeah.
to connect to anchor. Got it. However, the long game is change. And the long
Mm,
game is taking a look at what are those, to go back to, what are those patterns? What are the new patterns? What maybe big change do I need to make? What new part of me have I not discovered? Is there an unhealthy pattern that keeps resurfacing itself and I can't see it because I'm so mired um, in the busyness of life, in the hecticness, in the sweatshop mentality, trading time for money? So, how do I take a look? And that's where, someone like you can beautifully come in and rejig things, recalibrate the marketing plan. Um, and it requires the setting for growth and change is a pretty sustained period of discomfort.
mm.
Um, and
People don't
when
like
you're
that.
no, they don't like
People
that. They
don't
don't
like
want to
that.
stretch.
No.
No, no, but you know what? You and me talked about this before once. Is they can make sense of that in their physical self,
Yes.
right? And we talked about
Yes.
that. If you've got, like, your personal trainer, he gets you doing hard stuff.
Yeah.
It's not comfortable,
No,
but
it's
you
not.
want the results. You want hot
Yeah.
girl winter or whatever you
Yes.
right? You want that, so you're going to stick to the plan. You're going to stick
Yes.
with it and stretch. But somehow when we feel that discomfort emotionally, psychologically, um we have this weird narrative goes on that something's wrong with us,
Yeah. Yep.
right? maybe there's an unhealthy relationship at play there, but maybe you're just figuring out the new habit. We need
Mm,
time to get into that new groove. We
yes.
need time to cut the teeth of that new pattern. We need time for those new neural connections to form. And that does take sustained tolerance, that emotional muscle to get bigger.
Yeah. And circling back to a business is a marathon, not a sprint. So
Mhm.
what I often see is people want instant relief. So they're like, well, just tell me what a content strategy is so I can post it and get clients. I'm like, that's not how that works, first of all. and
Right.
then and
Yeah.
then I'm like, wait, and then when, I do an analysis on their business, I'm like, actually, this is like the long-term things that you need to be implementing, like joining, like joining a program, getting a mentor, like actively doing something, but like long term. But
Yeah.
then people will be like, well, but I did this thing for a couple weeks and I haven't seen results, or I did one
Right.
program and I didn't see the ROI I thought I was going to have. And
Right. Right.
I'm like, yeah, but what we're trying to do is not make you some like quick cash unless that's actually what you want. But like if you're in one of my programs, it's because you're building like a long-term business. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's not going to be possible in even 3 to 6 months. Like we're building something here that's going to sustain like generations ahead of you. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, there are parts where I can find you relief that you're like, oh, okay, that made me feel better. But
Right.
that
Right.
end goal of having a seven-figure business, like that is going to take time and it's going to be uncomfortable. And like that's literally why you need to be in a community, like you were saying, like to change that perspective. Like when things go up and down, like you need to have a community of people that aren't your loved ones, that aren't like your boyfriend, your girlfriend, or even like your business bestie. You need to be in like a specific container that holds
Mm.
space for that, because that's actually where change is going to happen.
Yes. Amazing. That's so well said. And you know, um, your friends will co-sign your bullshit,
Oh, yes.
right? Right. Your friends will, they didn't sign up to test you. They
Yeah.
didn't sign up to give you, and we all could say, oh, good friends are really honest. Yes. Maybe they're honest in that they're going to say where they're going to be, where they promise they're going to be, so you can trust them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And really, really good friends are honest in that feedback. But when it comes to this is big stuff. That's too heavy to burden a friend with. That's too heavy to burden a family
Yeah.
member. So just like you're saying, is finding that community, seeking that strong community out that is saying, yeah, I'll tell you that's not going to work. Um, and giving you some relief. So I don't want to give relief an entirely bad rap, because we do need it. And but we
Yes.
want to think about it in a way in terms of self-care. I want to deposit and sprinkle the seed of taking good
Absolutely.
care of yourself, which again is a long game. But
Yes.
to back to your really good point of surrounding yourself with people in your community that are going to do that. So maybe it is from more of a business mindset community. That also takes your capacity to build your trust in yourself and trust in others. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about trust. And I think it's a very dynamic concept. It's not a one and done. It's not something that you just have. It's dynamic in that you got to test it out. Can I trust myself here? I will trust myself here. And
Mm,
I will trust that if I go in this direction, it doesn't work out, I'm going to find the next place. Where people will stay stagnant and not make that decision, it does come back to they're either not trusting or they haven't taken a moment to look in the rear view mirror. Where did they just come
mm,
from? And that's those are like those are little things that will give you relief, that will give your clients relief. Is just say, hang on. You sound like you're heading to crash, but let's just look in the rear view
yes.
mirror for a minute.
Perspective.
Perspective, right?
Yes.
There's the front one and there's the rear one. Let's get perspective. Let's start to plan, or let's look back. And that is looking at your own relationship with trust, and looking at the relationship you have with trust with the people who are among you. Are they showing up? Are they seeing you? Are you seeing them? And I mean, you want to probably surround yourself with people who have a good diverse amount of wisdom in the fields that you're going in, to be able to have that amazing discussion that has a lot of discourse and dissent. That's where the bright idea or the option is going to be sprung from.
100%. And like, especially when it goes back to holding space, like even if you have like a huge network of just like business friends, like they aren't responsible to hold space for your growth. They didn't sign up
Right.
to give you
Yeah.
advice or be like, hey, let's
Mhm.
like work on this. But when you're in like a paid container, like a mastermind, like you're all there for the same collective vision and mission, and that's to help each other. So you're acknowledging, like, I am here to hold space for you because I also want space being held in return. And that's like
Mm.
such an amazing spark of magic that happens, where the instant relief could literally be like, I can like my client who had that moral client issue, and I asked her, I'm like,
Right.
I think it would be really beneficial to you if you brought this up in the group call, because I think it'd be really cathartic for you to speak it out loud and to
Mm.
share it. But I think it would be also really great for everybody else to hear about this
Mm.
experience you had. And when she shared that, everybody was like, oh my God, thank you for bringing that up. I actually
Oh.
had a similar situation happen to me, and I didn't know if I
Mhm.
was allowed to speak on it. Right.
Wow, wow.
The other day in the group, we had a conversation about somebody felt really guilty about something that they did. And they're like, I would never say this on Instagram or my stories because I don't want actually people knowing about this, but like I'm trusting you all that I can tell you this. Right. And it's like that actually, I've witnessed this in real time, that when they came into the container, yeah, they had self trust, but now because they've had each other over the last like 3 months at this point, that self trust has actually further developed because they've been willing to trust other people along the way.
Okay, this is so good. I love it. And like
Yes.
you just said, so what you're describing there, there's so many elements and concepts. So my mind is just going boom, boom, boom. So
Yeah.
what so what you're doing is you are composing. So your group composition,
Yeah.
you have selected for capacity. You've selected for consistency with who these people are, that they're there.
Yeah.
So you consistently can expect that they're going to show up. They've got the capacity to
Yes.
hear a range of responses to vulnerable sharing. So I feel guilty. I'm afraid. I need to say no. I got all of these things that come up. So that's really, because that isn't true for every group,
No,
and
it's very true.
you know
Yeah.
that's not true for every group. And I'm going to say part of that comes down to the leadership. So Anna, hats off to you for being a really dependable, reliable leader that's going to bring your group up so they know that if they can have trust right out of the gate, well, you're already setting the tone. Secondly, they're taking risks and they're trying it out. Can I trust this? Like, what's going to happen if I do share this? Am I going to be? And you can, I mean, it would be an amazing experiment when somebody does have that strength to expose some vulnerability, and whatever the concept is. Um, Look around and see what happens, and you'll read a lot without any words happening. You'll read a lot, and in somebody who is doing, I'd say, a vulnerable moment, they are really prime for being potentially grown or hurt.
Mm.
And if they're and our bodies just don't lie. And I am imagining, if it's going well like this, you've got a group of people who are sitting there like, we're ready. Yeah, let's go. Keep going. Don't stop. Keep going. So they're
Yeah.
because what you're encouraging is really, at more of a science level, unravel all those neurons that are tangled up. Let's separate them out. You know what? You can be brave, courageous, vulnerable, and scared at the same time. They don't need to get tangled up so that fear tamps them down. You can be all that and curious and um, hopeful and excited about the future and inspired. But when they're tangled up, they're a big ball and they sit
Yeah.
inside and they don't propel you, they don't compel you. So what you're talking about, building this container, making the composition so healthy, that really is the setting. And even in that, there'll still be people who will be hesitant to come forth. And I've often said to people, just to circle back just for a second to imposter syndrome, it's a syndrome, but you know what? It's not a disease. And there's a
Mm.
difference. It's not a
I
disease.
love
It,
that.
yeah, it's
It's not a
symptomatic.
chronic, it's not a chronic condition. It's
It's
not
not a chronic
cancer.
condition. Nope, nope. Um, and here's a way of a mindset shift of it is, and you can all say this to each other, is you're sitting on something really big. You're sitting
Mm.
on something that you're about to grow into. That maybe you've set yourself impossibly high standards. I hear this a lot with people who are about to do a presentation that they've never done before, or um, something with speaking, something that they in real time can be criticized. So I'll say, well, what if it was okay for your first time? Like, what if it was okay that you could just show up and do a little bit, and maybe you set the bar that it's just like you just pass. Like, what if that's the bar for the first time?
Yes, not every time has to be amazing, spectacular, sensational. Like it's okay to
Yeah,
not be the first time you try something. It actually like I would be shocked if it was.
right. Or even in that first time, there were 4 minutes that was 10 out of 10, and the rest of it was varying grades in
Hmm.
there.
Yeah.
So the thing that it gets called a syndrome is that when you apply an impossible standard that's not really achievable, and you feel ick about it.
Hmm.
So we can start to like name that, and when we can name it to tame it. We can name it that it's really fear inducing, it's really anxiety inducing. As soon as we're talking about it again, then we have governance over it, and we're back in the
Yes.
power seat.
Wow.
Yeah,
Amazing. Well, this has been a doozy of a conversation. I hope
it's been a
everybody
doozy.
it's been a doozy. Well, thank you so much for coming, Nicole. This has been so insightful. I hope that everybody who's listening to this has found it as beneficial as I have. Because obviously we can go on talking about this for like hours, months, years, but I feel like we really discussed like the key components of things that we're all feeling currently in our businesses that can at least start to move the needle forward from a sense of like knowing how to move through it and where to start. So thank you so much, Nicole. Where can everybody find you?
Well, first, thank you for having me, Anna. It's wonderful to talk with you. You can find me at coastalmind.com. That's it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Um,
um, Pause for a second.